What up, what up, what up? Yo, 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 yo. Welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for listening. My name is Bruce, or Bryce, whatever you want to call me. Known as Bruce on Twitch. Bryce everywhere else. In this episode, I have my very good friend, lifelong friend, Danny AKA Robit on Twitch. Absolutely amazing guy. This episode was something else. A lot of heartfelt discussion. I've known Danny for years. And it was really cool getting to talk with him. Goes a little long, an hour and a half, and it didn't feel like near enough time. I have to get him back on again. I cried. It was nuts. It was nuts. This one is super special to me. There was some technical difficulties, but not a lot. I'm still learning. I know I say that every episode. I learned a lot, so that was good. I'm going to get right into it, though. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for checking me out. Make sure you go check out Danny's project Trash Planet. I do a couple of voices in it as well. It'll be in the description of the YouTube. It'll be in the description of the YouTube video. Also, you can just search YouTube for Trash Planet. Lots of big things coming down the pipe for that. Thanks again for listening. I love you. Take care of yourselves. And yeah, enjoy. So I mean, I guess we can just like get into it. Yeah, I don't know. Like, I've known you for so long, but I don't know how to like introduce you because you don't stream. This is my buddy Robit, aka Danny.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Known you for how many years? How many years?
Man, a long time. I mean, like I meet you like my sophomore year, so your junior year, something like that.
See, but Danny, I knew of you since like 7th grade.
Yeah, we went to middle school together, and I was
bit of a prick.
I was a class act, man. Yeah, I was. Well, I mean, during those years, I think I was maybe I was a bastard. But mostly I was just trying to like do dumb things to make people laugh because I was deeply insecure. And all these years later, nothing has changed.
yeah.
As I was trying to tee up some kind of a difference between then and now, I really just can't. I mean, like, I'm not quite as dumb, but if somebody's as dumb as they were in the 7th grade, then
we'd be in a bit of trouble.
Wrong. Yeah, something horribly wrong has happened.
Yeah. I mean, I remember I came from a different school and I transferred to that middle school in like 7th grade. And
where'd you go? Where'd you transfer from?
Without like naming names, like the newly built one.
Dude, what? Me too. I went there too.
No way.
Yeah, I went there for a half a year. Then I moved over. That's where I met Brett. That's where I met like, a bunch of Jake Grange. That's where I met all those folks. And then I moved over. But anyway, sorry. Yeah. I moved over there halfway through. I was halfway through the school year. That's so funny. Yeah.
So I went there all of 6th grade and then we moved and then I went to this new school and I made a lot of friends at the old school. But then when I went to the new school, no one liked me. There was one kid there named Isaac who liked me. But then like I remember I got a skateboard and then instead of like everyone liking me, everyone made fun of me because I couldn't skateboard.
God, it's so crazy, man. Like honestly, skateboarding for me was, if it wasn't for skateboarding, I have no idea because, we were so poor and just it showed, you know what I mean? Like you look at me and you say, this kid is in a bad spot. But skateboarding, it kind of allowed a certain amount of that. It was kind of like somehow in to be kind of like this grungy looking kid if you skateboarded. Right. So I was afforded some degree of like, an in where I can get some kind of popularity. I still had to work my ass off at being like a funny person to kind of get any amount of popularity or any amount of people liking me. But if it wasn't for the skateboarding, there were people that were just like me that just weren't getting in the door because they didn't have this thing.
Yeah. I mean, Yeah. That was the Danny. I hate to do this.
What's up?
Get fucked up. Okay.
No worries.
Hold on. I was looking at the waveform and fuck, that was such good stuff. I was looking at the waveform. Okay. It was recording you and me. It was doing what I wanted it to do yesterday. Okay.
We can start over if we need to.
We need to. All right. So
do you want me to close out of this?
No. We're going to keep it going because I might have some stuff in there that I can save. But okay. So I am here with my buddy Danny, AKA Robit. We've had a hell of a time. I've had a hell of a time trying to get this recorded, but we got it now. It's set up.
Danny, we are on easy street now. You know what I mean? Like no matter what we're on out, we are going to be crystal clear, baby.
I'm so sorry, man. I'm sorry that happened. We were having a little bit of a conversation, and I thought I had this set up going correctly, and I didn't. So, but now I do. So yeah, what we were saying, I mean, so I've known. It's hard for me to introduce Robit or Danny because he doesn't stream, but I've known him for years. I mean, like 7th grade, I think I knew you didn't know who I was, but I knew who you were, sort of thing.
No, I definitely knew who you were. I definitely knew who you were for sure. I remember like meeting you and seeing you at shows and being like, oh, I know that guy. Because you were taking pictures at all the shows. And I was like, how the hell? Okay. So there's like a whole thing here.
You skateboarded. And I tried to skateboard, but I couldn't. But I really fell in love with taking pictures of my friends skateboarding. And I think that was kind of my like pseudo way of getting in, I guess.
Yeah, I think that skateboarding, man, like for me, it's crazy. So as I had already said, but I will repeat.
Please, thank you.
Yeah, of course. Being like growing up, you know, my folks were, you know, real poor, like very poor. And like, you know, in and out of jail and stuff. So we didn't have a lot. So as a result, like we kind of, we looked exactly or more poor than we were. Or, you know, I would say exactly. I don't know that we could look any more poor than we were because we were pretty damn poor. And skateboarding, and luckily I had friends that kind of had what I thought, it's so funny now. Like, I'm like, those guys were rich. And now I'm like, no, like not at all. I was just very poor.
Yeah. Dude, that's crazy. It's crazy. Perspective's crazy, man.
Oh my God. Anybody that had a house, I was like, what? Yeah. So I would get these hand-me-down boards and they're always in rough shape, but I was always so psyched to get them. And so I was able to kind of skateboard with the stuff. And as a result, like being like a skateboarder allowed me to look the way I looked, and people were forgiving of it all of a sudden because I looked, you know, I just looked like a skateboarder. Like no matter how rough or like, you know, haggard I looked, it was just kind of part and parcel with the style. So it kind of worked out. And I was able to kind of somehow, you know, this kid that was like clearly didn't have any business hanging out with anybody that was interesting or cool at all, managed to get lucky and meet a couple of cool people, which, you know, inevitably led me to you down the line.
Right. I mean, I'm pretty fucking cool, dude. I'm just kidding.
No, I mean, but seriously though, like, you know, and when you're a kid like this thing and you your entire life is, you know, growing up, all I had was my sister up until, you know, we moved into that house where I met everybody. Yeah. And so before that, we were moving around, you know, my parents were like evading the cops and we were never in one place, staying with our grandparents, moving somewhere else, coming back, moving somewhere else. And finally we got one place and we stayed there for a while. And it was kind of like this monumental change. And that's when I started meeting other people that weren't my family. You know, I made friends for the first time in my life. Like my life began really like in the 6th grade.
Is this the house that was over by the skate park?
No. So, do you remember when I said, hey, can you go to my house and get my skateboard? And you walked into my neighbor's house?
Yeah. How could I ever forget that story?
Yeah. Next door to those guys' house, that house.
Okay. Because I remember there was a house over by the skate park that had like a sunroom in the front or something. And
then like yes.
I do remember that.
So basically that first house, we were living there from like, I think I was like 6th grade to 10th grade. And we got evicted because they basically came and the cops were looking for like my sister. She had stolen a bunch of shit, my older sister.
Yeah.
And they had found somebody that was wanted, and they had found some drug paraphernalia in the house. And we were on like welfare and Section 8. So when they saw that, we got evicted. And at that time, I had decided that I was going to take care of myself. So I moved out.
How old were you?
At that time, I must have been like 15, maybe 16.
Man. Yeah.
And so I stayed with some friends for a while. And then my mom got another house, a house that you're referring to. Mm-hmm. And I think we hung on to that for maybe 9 months to a year or something. And then we got evicted for damn near the same exact reason. Yeah. It's like, how did this happen again in such a short amount of time? No, and then from then on, I was on my own.
So, but you like, it's so hard because you realize, right, that like, that is not like how your story is not how it's like, it's not how most people we know have grown up, but it's how so many have grown up at the same time.
Oh, you know? A lot, man. And there's a weird, crazy thing with it too, because, you know, you think that when you have that kind of life and you manage to get out of it, you know, you think like, oh, I made it. Like, I remember when I first had it, I had like a lot of, obviously, I think like early on, like resentment support the kind of people that kind of landed me there. But after a while, you just kind of feel bad because you feel like these people are suffering still. A lot of people are still suffering, man.
Yeah.
And you start learning like, you know, addiction is like this disease and it's not as if they can just turn it off.
Right. And right. Yeah.
They don't have like a lot of resources. So then like your resentment kind of turns to sorrow, and you have like, you know, some, I think, survivor's guilt around some of that stuff. So,
yeah, that's rough.
Yeah. It's a pretty, you know, I would say there's a lot of like conflicting feelings about a lot of that stuff. But I mean, ultimately, you know, I'm obviously insanely grateful because through all of this stuff, somehow people that were, you know, capable of giving a tremendous amount of love, or people that I really looked up to, inspired by, people that I learned a lot from, like things that if you were to flip a coin through, you know, over the course of 15 years and constantly get your head picked, like that's kind of like what happened. I kind of just got lucky over and over and over and over and over and over again. You know what I mean? And there's obviously hardships along the way, but overall, like, you know, for example, like, when I first met you, you know, you were a person like you were a person that was hustling. Like everybody that you knew was, you know, skateboarding and you were taking pictures of it, or, you know, playing music and you were playing music, or you're taking pictures, or you're hustling and trying to record people, or you're making like shirts. Like you just always had some tertiary side hustle. And I always was like, I loved that. There was like, it wasn't just the thing. There was this world around it. And that was a meaningful thing to me. Or when you opened up a venue, like those things were important to me because I was like, you can build whatever you want if you just do it.
Right. I mean,
and that's a thing that I had to learn.
To be honest, like the only reason I did all that stuff is because I wanted to fit in, you know. It's kind of like, it's really interesting. Like I just wanted to be cool. You know what I mean? Like, and I think that there's a lot of power behind wanting to be cool. Like it causes people to do good and bad things. And I think that maybe, you know, it became, I don't know. It's weird. It's hard to explain. I mean, it's, I thank God, you know, thank fucking God that I did it. Cause like got to meet like you and a bunch of like Crosby, like a bunch of like really amazing friends that I'll have for the rest of my life. I had, but during the time of doing that, like it wasn't for any other reason than to just be like, yeah, like for those of you that don't know, like I had a little music venue sort of set up at a skate park, and we built a stage and had one show there, and then got the cops called on us, and But they continued to do shows inside, and then I would book shows at other places. And
yeah, you were booking shows forever for a while. Like you were kind of like the go-to guy that was booking a lot of shows. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, we got to book
did a lot,
like
man.
It was cool. Like that was back in the day. Like you had to have a fax machine for some of them.
Yeah. It's like what?
They had management team that would want like guarantees. So like I had to fax them a contract that I signed.
Like where did you first know that? Because I mean, how did you learn that?
It's all on MySpace. So like I would see kind of a little, I would look up bands that I was, because like did you ever like just search for music? Like the big thing back then was to like bands that no one had ever heard of.
Yeah, absolutely.
So like I would look up bands that no one had ever heard of, and then I would find you would very quickly find like established bands based on how many shows they were playing versus like kind of not really. So I'd find ones that had a bunch of shows, like Horse the Band.
Plus you had that top 8, dude. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Band you like? What's their top 8 like?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So like I would find them, and they would always be playing Portland, San Francisco, Seattle, Portland, San Francisco. And so I'd be like, listen, I could book you in Eugene and pay you better than Portland or San Francisco will. And like, that's how I would sell it. And they would be like, all right, cool.
The craziest thing. Like what you know what I mean? Like just some kid with like
the
colossal balls.
Yeah. But just reach out to him. And once you start to build a rapport, I think like, remember Scars of Tomorrow?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So like when I booked Scars of Tomorrow, they were like, we had such a good time. Like we'll hook you up with all these other people. So like I instantly got 100 contacts, and then I started having bands email me all the time. Dog and Pony Show, Duck Duck Goose. Who was the, I even got like contact with like, I helped make that like Emery show happen.
Yeah, dude, all kinds of things. Pistolita.
Yeah. They went on to tour with like Brand New. Who was another one? Like it was just cool, right? Like none of those bands I don't think exist anymore, but
like, isn't that such a strange thing? Like such a, like, you know what I mean? Like this is what I'm talking about with this luck thing where I managed, because skateboarding, when I was in skateboarding was kind of like this thing where it's really interesting. It's this thing where you work and they're psyched at what you're doing. I mean, they're bastards with skateboarding. There's bastards everywhere, but really it's just this thing where there's this really excited thing where people are excited about your progress. You have one person that's doing, a backside lip slide down a 10 stair, and that's huge. Yeah, and then you have me who kickflips a 4 stair, and it's not nearly as huge, but the excitement is the same because you have people that are just excited about your progress. Right. And there's this saying in there that was like always supportive, and there was like this brotherhood built in the saying. It was like a family when I didn't have one. Yeah. And then after I started realizing that I didn't want to hurt myself anymore, I started getting into emotional music.
Started hurting myself emotionally.
Yeah. I was like, I'm going to start doing these internal wounds. But there is the same thing. You know what I mean? Like you have people that are like, I went to a high school. I was in high school. It's one of these shows, and like these shows are run by high schoolers that were faking these insurance forms, booking bands, paying out guarantees, running a door, setting up merch booths. You know what I mean? Like making sure that they were getting there early, setting up the show, making sure that lights were prepared, and then setting up afterwards. And then that was the baseline. And then everybody was expanding and growing on top of that, Yeah. Everybody had this hustle. There's like this small little economy. There's this rule that if you get knocked down, you get picked up, or you pick somebody up. Like there's like, it was just, there's just a lot of stuff that if you're paying attention, there's a ton to learn for sure. And it's crazy to think like these were high schoolers. Have you ever seen a high schooler? Do you know what a high schooler looks like now? Yeah, dude. They're tiny miniature people. It's crazy that people are like, you know what I mean? I see a high schooler driving and I'm like, what in the shit is happening?
Watch out, dude.
Oh my God. That's no shit on the wheel.
I mean, seriously, like, and I remember my mom and dad, like, I remember them like talking about it and going like, wow, like, Bryce, God, there was a parking lot was full. And my dad being like, well, we used to have parties and there would be a line all the way down 50th Street for 55. Like, you know, I mean, we weren't drinking though. We weren't doing drugs. Like we were just trying to get as many people into that room as humanly possible.
Yeah.
And
I mean, there was some drinking, there was some drugs for some people, but like for the most part, it was a very like positive experience for everybody. And like everybody was definitely like kind of keeping, I think, you know, I don't know, it was crazy, man. It was really crazy. People made a lot of friends, and it encouraged like this, you know, passing down the torch mentality, I think.
Right.
Too. You know what I mean? And it's crazy, like the amount of participation. Like if I get a flyer now for anything, there is a 99% shot that I chuck in that fucking thing. Right. You know what I mean? But then like you get a handbill, you're like, I'm free and I'm going.
Deal.
Yeah.
Dude, man. They were like gold.
Yeah.
That's a whole nother.
Have you managed to hang on to any of those handbills?
I'm sure my parents did. When I moved out, I left everything up on the wall.
Yeah, that's probably worth like revisiting, taking a look at, man. Some of those those old flyers.
We had I completely forgot. That was like an art.
Yeah, and people were making flyers. There's another thing right there.
Yeah,
like they're just figuring out how to do these art, like little pieces of weekly art, and putting it on this thing, and then just selling it off.
Yeah, man, that's
just like they just hand it to fucking thousands.
Yeah, we'd go to
packed rooms.
We'd go to like Albertsons and like use their copier there. Yeah, and then we would just go home and cut them, and then I think Eric was like, dude, we should actually like go to Kinko's. Then we went to Kinko's or FedEx or somewhere.
Yeah.
And like it was like 50% cheaper, and they'd cut them for you. And then they said that they weren't going to cut them for us anymore, but they were still like way cheaper. Yeah, man, that's a whole you're on a few of them, I think. Your face.
Yeah. After a while, when we started doing the Eola stuff, we had that kind of like relationship with Of Mountains and Chris, and he was always putting me on his because I don't remember what it was, but we were always kind of like making fun of each other, and I would say really heavily them making fun of us, but I was always such a good sport because I loved it. Like we made that video that you shot, and then you helped them shoot a video which is just an exact parody of our video. Yeah,
that was all Chris's idea, I think.
yeah, but I mean, like, you know, to me it's just fun. People just having fun. Yeah.
I mean, and like that's kind of where a lot of what we do today, like I feel like a large part of it has changed, but at the same time, like it hasn't changed for me. You know, now I'm just kind of doing solo stuff. I mean, it's obviously changed, right? And I think I had a huge depression a few years back, and a large part of why I was like that was because I didn't have anything going on.
Right? Yeah. Yes.
Like I didn't have it. I didn't have anything. I didn't have anything going on, and so much of my life I did. And then I discovered Twitch, and that changed everything for me.
Yeah, so that's so crazy because I had that same thing. Like after we're playing music with the Eolas, like, and we were taking it pretty seriously and trying to do the touring thing. So when we broke up, I had a bit of I think a similar thing, like a bit of an identity crisis where I was like, if that's not it, like I kind of put all of my chips in on this thing. Yeah. So if I'm not making music, then what is the next thing?
Right.
And like, I tried a lot of things. I went to school and it didn't stick. You know what I mean? Like all these things that I was just kind of doing. And yeah, it took a long time before I found some kind of like purpose again, especially because those other things you had, like, you just found yourself in a thing where you had this community of people where you just kind of got this energy just by virtue of like rubbing shoulders with other people that are doing shit.
Yeah.
But when you have to figure that out alone in a room, that's pretty intimidating, man. That's pretty hard.
Yeah. Or like when, you know, for me, it was like growing up. It was like, you know, I'm not with these people anymore. I don't live in this town anymore. I felt like I abandoned a lot of it and I don't know why I did. It was just like this. It was really crazy. Like when I moved out of Eugene to Portland, I just remember like sitting up there in that apartment on that couch and just being like, wow, like I it's all like, I'll never do any of that again. And I originally came up to Portland to like make a name for myself or whatever in my mind, you know, and it's just like, it was a culture shock of like, wow, this is a lot bigger than there's people who here have been doing what I'm doing on a scale way larger than I'll ever be on. And I think that was kind of like the start of that like depression cycle that lasted 5 or 6 years for me.
Right.
And it was weird. It was weird, man. It was like, becoming like a really good skateboarder in your town and then moving to like Orange County where kids skateboard for classes in high school.
Yeah, it's like nothing.
Like, yeah, like everything I've done is nothing.
That I definitely experienced that. You know what I mean? Like when you just move to an area where there's a lot of people, the challenge is pretty intense. And I felt that way when I started working even at Apple, where I was just like, there are just people here that are just, everybody here is talented. Everybody's here is good at doing shit. You know what I mean? Like in Eugene or like in a smaller area, there's, I mean, like, you know, a lot of people like that, there's like, I'm just going to live my life. I'm not trying to like impress anybody. I'm not trying to do any of this for real. I just want to live my life. That's it.
Yeah.
So like there's, you know, if you do anything with any amount of conviction at all, like you can rise to some degree of like, you know, I don't know, rise in prominence sounds so stupid and sounds like so egotistical. But you know what I mean? You can rise to the top of that pretty small pool pretty quickly. But then you move to anywhere, even like Portland, which is like, as far as cities go, pretty small. Yeah. And immediately you realize that like you're not shit and you better be willing to like definitely work for what it is that you're wanting to do here. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah. I'll never forget it. I would take pictures at the Wow Hall and stuff all the time. And then I remember taking my camera to the Crystal Ballroom and getting lucky enough to get to be up at the front and like literally just having like actual professionals just throw me out of the way.
Right.
Like I was nothing. And me and my little camera put my tail between my legs. And I remember very specifically thinking like, I will never do that again. Like that was humiliating. And I never did. I never wanted to experience that sort of fall again in a weird way.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah. I've
had
that. I've had that like with simple shit, like going to the gym.
Yeah.
And not knowing how to work a machine, be like, I'm going to get the hell out of here.
Right. And no one treated me in any sort of way. I think it was just more that like, I realized like, wow, like this is a lot bigger than me. I'll just come back to it when I'm a little bit more grown up. And I never ended up. I just talked myself out of it. My heart was
right. Like that's the place where you have to grow up. It's like, you just have to kind of keep throwing it. This is like the same thing, like, you know, with people that do stand up, like, you know, there's no other place to learn how to do stand up, but on the stage in front of people. There's no baby step. Really, you know what I mean? You just do the thing and then you just keep doing it, exposure therapy style, you know,
right.
Expose yourself to this thing until it becomes less and less of a problem. And that's the case for, you know, turns out a lot of things, a good deal of things. You know, I was talking about this with like social anxiety or something like that. Like I've never started a job and felt comfortable at all. I more or less like lost my mind, and you know, near or did have a panic attack. But you know, nevertheless, I had to do it because I would rather have a panic attack than be homeless. So you have to develop these coping mechanisms, and you keep doing it every day and it gets easier because you meet friends, you learn things to kind of talk about, you loosen up a little bit, and things kind of get easier. But if you kind of shield yourself from that thing, you know, it possesses a degree of power over you, which is easier said than done. Most of my life, if it's not a job that I have to have, I've run away from the damn thing.
No doubt. I mean, and like the craziest part is like it gets so substantially easier every single time you do it.
Yeah.
But the way you hype yourself out of it is so right. It's like, oh man, like the way dread, like the self dread And then you go and it's like, okay, like that wasn't so bad. And then the next time it's like, that wasn't, it's or I mean, it takes longer for everybody, but like I've definitely had jobs where I'm like, I'll never get this. I'll never, dude, I've had streams where in the middle of the stream, I'm like, I'm a total failure. Like this, what is happening?
Yeah. Kind of get in your own head and you can't like really shake it in the moment.
Yeah. And then I'll have a stream where like, it's the best stream of my life. And I'm like, I can't believe I ever felt that way. That's a whole nother conversation.
That's a real thing though. Isn't it crazy too? Cause like the negative stuff tends to stick better. Like, that moment, like if you had gone say to the Crystal Ballroom 2 times and you went to go take some pictures and you had one night where you were like, you were a king, you took great photos, you managed to shoot a roll of, quality film. Right. And, and then you went the next night and the night that you did experience happened where you were just pushed off the stage, get the hell out of here, kid. You're nothing. Yeah. And then that would by far be a more prominent thing in your head. That's this like this curse of like the human condition that we're just more familiar with negative stimulus and we respond better to negative stimulus than we do positive. It's insane, but it's the truth. And it's like this, it's impossible to kind of override that thing, but it's, it's worth recognizing, I guess, but it's really hard for sure.
Right. And I think too, like if you also have to cut yourself, there's a level of realization. If I had gone to the Crystal Ballroom, and had that terrible night and I'm like, I'm going to go again. And I had a terrible night. And then on the third night, I had a good night, right? Like I'd be like, okay, like there is some good here. But if I'm going every single night and I'm getting kicked in the face every single night, it's kind of like I need to maybe reassess or I need to start doing some kicking of my own, like, yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
But when you're 24 or whatever, and like, it was just, I don't know. I don't know what happened. I don't know. I just it was enough of a change for me to change passion. And, I still obviously have like all my camera stuff and I still love it, but, that's
definitely a different thing too. Like when you realize the fire is going out, like
I think that was a lot of it.
Fire, like, cause that, that happened with me with skateboarding, that happened with me with music. Like when we were done, I was just like, I don't think I'm going to be able to write anything that I'm like really psyched about. Like it's different now for me. It's not, I'm defeated or anything like that. It's just not the same anymore. And I don't know what that means. So yeah, it's definitely like worth taking a step back and having a conversation with yourself, which can be always pretty difficult, pretty tough to figure out what's going on there.
Yeah. I mean, and I love cameras. I love the art of photography. I love music. I love I love seeing people in large groups singing the same song. Like it's not that the passion for what it is gone. It's more, if anything, it's more now. It's that the stress I put on myself to try to get to a higher level has become, it's like I'm tired of losing track of like why I loved it in the first place.
Okay.
It's like, it's like I was tired of trying to impress these bands or tired of trying to like land a photo in like AP magazine when some kid online is doing it or like,
yeah. Oh God, these little bastards. Yeah.
Yeah. And like, it's like, I'm more just going to enjoy other parts of my life now. And like, it was just like, imagine like, you're with somebody and you're like, man, I'm just so tired of trying to impress you. And then they go like, get out of the way. And you're like, all right, fine. I'm gone. It's like a way out almost.
Right. Yeah.
It's interesting.
I haven't kind of kicks you in the ass and you gotta realize that.
Yeah. Like I haven't really luckily I haven't had many of those in my life.
So what was the transition? So, I mean, obviously, and I don't know to what degree you've kind of covered this, but there was a bit of a gap. And I think the gap was pretty similar for me. I mean, I can bridge a bit of a gap between, music and what I'm currently doing, but I'm interested in photos, like you're doing a lot of photography, and then I think that for a while you were like you're doing photography for bands, and you're like, well, I do this thing and I love this thing, so you got into street photography, and you started doing some wedding stuff to try to make this like a, you know, because you're trying to like elevate it, right? You're like, how do I do this thing that I love for money, so I'm able to kind of take control over my own paycheck here, right?
Yeah.
What was the transition from doing something like that to eventually being like Twitch?
Yeah, so I did the band thing. That never really paid anything, right? And then,
Right.
so like it was.
It turns out mostly bands are broke.
Yeah, yeah. Right. And then like street stuff didn't really, you know, fund the habit. And I was working a lot at the time. And it was funny enough, on Craigslist, I was searching for camera stuff, and I sold a lens to a guy who was a wedding photographer. And he was like, I'm developing this software that people can come into my office and they can tap on 10 photos, and then the photos change. They tap on 10 more, and then the photos change. Then they tap on 3, and then the photos change. And then they tap on 1, and it assigns them a photographer for their wedding. And I was like, that's fucking brilliant. And he was like, yeah. So like the thing is, like, I get a bunch of pictures from photographers, and the pictures that are the best, you get more work. And I was like,
wow, that's cool.
I was like, I know what's trendy. I know what people want. This was like before Instagram was a thing. This was when it was just like, there was wedding photos were coming out, and like photographers were just chomping at the bit to do the next thing, right? Like, remember when like all the photos were like tilted, or like there was like a ton of vignetting, and like tons of saturation, and then no saturation, and then, you know, Instagram with the filters and like Visco Cam and all that changed everything. But then it was like you either knew that this was a knowledgeable photographer that knew what was nice, or your dad's friend who had a really nice camera and thought he knew everything about photography, right? Like there was a very strict divide. And I gave him photos, and I started getting tons of work. And that ruined everything about photography for me. I hated it after that, because it just ruined it. I went from thinking, oh, I want to be a professional photographer so bad, to actually getting it, and then dreading doing it I dreaded it. Dude, shooting weddings, you know, I shot, I don't know, in that summer, I did it full time for like 4 months. And I think I was shooting like 15, 20 weddings a month. And like, that's just an insane amount of, it was just too much for me.
Right.
And I hated it. And,
was it because like you felt as though there was like some kind of a creativity taken away from it? What was it that you didn't like about it?
Well, every wedding was so pretentious, and like, they were all these like extremely wealthy people and I drove like a beat to hell, broken down Subaru Legacy station wagon, like a 91. I remember specifically one of the photographers that I got teamed up with saying, you know, because we'd go out to coffee the day before or whatever, and him saying, you know, like, I'd maybe park that car a few blocks away because you don't want to really be seen in it. And I remember being like, yeah, you're right. Like, yeah. And like, and that was nothing, right? Like everything down to the way you dressed, to the way you presented yourself. And it was just too much for a kid who, you know, just wanted to, you know what I mean? Like it was just too adult, too fast, too, I don't know, weird.
Kind of took away some of the fun of it.
Yeah.
ended up turning into this thing where it's just like, you know, you got to measure up to this specific thing. And, you know, if you want to make it in this, you got to be a person that you don't like, basically.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was like and all I was still in this mindset where like, you know, I just want to hang out with my skateboarder music friends and like, you know, wear American Apparel hoodies and be something that I'm not. You know, I was just trying to figure my life out, and like, it was just, I don't know, man.
Yeah, there's an interesting kind of transition from those days when trying to figure yourself out. Like when you're like, you know, I mean, you definitely learn a lot about yourself during those years, but then there kind of comes a time where you're like, okay, well, what am I outside of this groupthink, this like, you know, community of people? Like, who am I specifically? And that's that could be a pretty difficult bridge to cross.
Yeah, and I think too, there was a very stark, very, very, very definite line. You know, I gained a bunch of weight and I hated myself, and I was so ashamed of myself, and I still hold a lot of that. And like, I didn't want anyone from like the show going days or anyone who were my real friends. I just didn't want any of them to know who I was anymore.
Right.
I didn't want because I didn't want anyone to laugh at me, and I didn't want anyone to like make fun of me. And the only way I knew how to not have that happen was to just avoid everyone at all costs.
Right.
And it was very, very hard because I picked up drinking, and then that just turned into this spiral from hell, the darkest times of my entire life, a real stain. And like, thank God you, Josh, some other people, Edith, stuck with me through that. It's something I'm still battling with, but like, you know, it was just this time where I was so ashamed of myself. When I was working with you at Apple, like, I almost lost my job so many times because I was so afraid I was going to go in there and somebody was going to come into the store that I knew from the days when I booked shows and stuff and go like, oh, wow, like he got really fat. And like, that was enough for me to just almost get fired.
Right.
It was such a rough fucking time. And like, it was, and like that kind of started near the end of like the photography time. Like, and it just got out of control. And
it's just like a crazy amount to kind of carry too. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
especially when you're trying to figure out who you are and you just have this. I mean, I think, and this isn't to say that, you know, anything equates to anybody else's thing, but as I've gotten older, I've realized that a lot of people have something like that, you know, something that they are ashamed of or insecure about. And sometimes it's more than one thing, and sometimes it's just a lot of one thing. And there are varying amounts or whatever. It's an impossible thing to really measure, but you know, that's an incredible amount of, pressure to kind of like feel that way. And you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I think I understand on some level what that might be like, you know, in my own way. I think that obviously I wouldn't go as far to say that I understand completely, but yeah, man, that's a lot. And especially if you're trying to figure out like who you are, then you have this other thing. And then the drinking, man, if you're sad and depressed and you turn to drinking because it makes you feel better right now, I mean, there is a poetic irony in the fact that it just makes it way worse.
Dude, yeah, I mean, like I remember getting just blasted.
It's a depressant. You know what I mean?
Dude, yeah, and I remember just like talking to myself about, I remember fantasizing about being this like famous author or something weird. Like, and it was so, and being like, okay, like this is like all of my friends from back in the day will be like so proud of me and like finally proud of, you know, and like I'd made it and all this weird, just nonsensical stuff. And like, that's what drinking did for me. And like, it put me into this. It was like watching a movie about myself where the ending was exactly what I wanted it to be.
Right.
And like, it's never like that.
Right.
It's, and it was just a hard realization. And I'm sure like someone is going to listen to this who is able to relate. And, you know, dude, I attribute like Twitch, and I've said this since day one, Twitch made me realize, it allowed me to like kind of put myself back out there in a way that was very calculated and very like a way that I wanted to. Right. It wasn't like going to out to the mall and like being vulnerable or whatever. Like I was able to be just as vulnerable as I wanted to be. And then every day I got to be a little bit more vulnerable and a little bit more vulnerable. And like, I think it saved my life, man. Like, I mean, you know, and like, I'm not anything crazy. And I hate to make this podcast about me. I'm so sorry.
No,
it's just like, you know,
I asked you a question. So it's you know, you keep going.
I think what I'm getting at is, I think the important thing is if you're in that situation, like you got to work the hardest part, and what you really got to do is you got to find your own like version of Twitch. You have to find your own way of like getting out of that, whatever it is.
I think that I have a decent transition. So I think that I had a version of that for sure. Because after music, there was, you know, it wasn't going to be music for a while. So I felt pretty, I think, depressed at the fact. I mean, like there were other things, you know, pretty rough breakup that I was going through, and I had moved to a new area, and I had kind of like left everything that I knew back in, I mean, that's probably an exaggeration. It felt that way, but I was with my best friend. So I was like, you know, I was in decent shape. Then I had you too. I was able to reconnect with you after not living in the same area as you for a while. Yeah. You know, I was able to kind of, you know, get a job and slowly kind of make my way up. But, you know, I started smoking a lot of weed, and, in a weird way, this is so funny because this is a similar thing to you, but there's definitely gonna be a different take. So for me, and when it comes to addiction, I've gotten pretty lucky. As you know, as far as coming from like a family of, you know, I am one of 6 children, all of which are addicts. I have, you know, a mother and a father, both are addicts. Like I come from a long line of addicts, and I just got lucky where I don't, you know, every time like I'm drinking too much, I get anxious because I realize that I'm drinking too much. I have never done any hard drugs at all. You know, I had like an Adderall. I was taking Adderall a bunch because it was prescribed to me. Yeah. Super addictive stuff. And I started realizing it was just making me anxious. And I was able to kind of quit cold turkey. You know, just told my friends, hey, I'm going to be weird for a couple of days because I'm not going to have any damn dopamine in my head. So it's going to look like I'm really depressed, but that'll kind of phase out. And I was able to do it. So as far as like dealing with addiction in the conventional sense, I got lucky. But something like weed, I think that it's obviously not a, chemically addictive. Heavily, but it has like there's something addictive to it. This idea of like, you know, having this saying, I used it pretty like, you know, I would come home from work and I was always stressed from work because it was always insanely busy, and I would use this thing to kind of just like relax now right away so that I can just kind of get back to living my life. And during those years I was just literally just, you know, smoking weed and watching a lot of TV. But in a weird way, as I was watching a ton of TV, watching a ton of comedy, it kind of became clear to me, I was like, I want to do something like this. And I was too afraid, because I think that during those early years, like this is kind of like when we were talking about earlier, like how did you know how to book a band? Like how do you know how to do something? You know what you want to do, but you have no idea how to do the thing. And you see how other people did it. They did stand up. Not gonna fucking happen. I'm not getting on no damn stage.
I think you'd be great at it.
Oh my God. No, preparing a set. I did karaoke one time. The one thing where you can get on karaoke, you can sing whatever you want and people will cheer you on. I got on karaoke and I got booed. Like, there's just, hey man. Hey man. Yeah. I'm not saying that I couldn't figure it out if I applied my own principles of this thing and where you just face the thing and get better at it. But when I got an iPad and I started drawing on the iPad, I was able to kind of make comedy without having to put myself out there in that way. It's kind of like, Twitch, this thing where you can take the gradual approach.
Right.
To kind of finding your voice without having to be like, no, it's all or nothing. I'm diving into the deep end, sink or swim, baby. And I don't know how to swim. And that's a real story. So, when I first started doing it, I was like, maybe it'll be webcomics, maybe it'll just be stupid little, characters. That's what it started off with, just like little characters. That's what you can still see on my Instagram page. And then after a while, it's like, oh, maybe if I can learn to animate these characters. And then I started doing rough animations. But then I had already fallen in love with in my life, like these other cartoons with really rough animations. So I was like, you can just start there and just make something with the tools that you have. And then you can kind of make your way up from there. So it was kind of this tool that, I was able to kind of somehow make a plus out of for the better part of my 20s, sitting around smoking weed and just watching just a huge amount of comedy shows and seeing in real time, what is it you like? What is it you don't like? How they did it? What inspires you? How you might do it? And just being around really funny people and constantly riffing. And, we've made a number of attempts at writing something, but nobody wanted to appear on a camera. Well, this kind of solved for that way down the line. So there's something to that, man. I think that finding this thing that works for you, that allows you just to kind of tinker with something and just do it. And then, there is a degree to which if you like it, do it. I've kind of always felt a degree of drive at the prospect that I don't love working for somebody else and doing things that I don't love. You know what I mean? I think that those jobs, they're when I'm doing them, I find a way of doing it well, and I find a way of enjoying myself. I'm pretty good at that. Mostly it involves just screwing around a lot. But when I'm, and it involves not being the best employee oftentimes. But with something like this, I like the idea of investing in yourself and investing in those around you that have this thing in them, that if you could just share it with other people that didn't know them, that didn't know you, and figuring out a way to kind of enhance that, a little bit, polish it and kind of direct it a little bit. It's the best, man. It's this new thing that I've, I can go back and see all the things that kind of led up to it, but I would have never expected to arrive where I'm making cartoons at all. 0% chance at all.
It's really crazy how Trash Planet, for those of you that don't know, Robit or Danny he created a cartoon called Trash Planet, and I do a couple of voices in it. Trash Planet is really kind of the combination of everything in this weird way. If you really think about it, it's a combination of everything up until now, kind of all of the skills that we've developed over the years, in terms of drive, stories from growing up, the ability to communicate with each other, and more so than anything, the drive to want to make something that people will really like, and to work for yourself. There's just a whole bunch of things, right? It's kind of the combination of all of that, even if it's just the beginning. I feel like a lot of us, me and you in particularly, I feel like a bottle of champagne that's so shaken up. All I need is something to just allow the cork to fly out, and I'm gone, baby. You know what I mean? Are you there?
Yeah, I'm listening. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, no, it's okay. We've had so many technical difficulties tonight.
Yeah.
I just need that thing to just, I have so much built up drive, You just need that opportunity.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I was talking about earlier. You in your way, like, I've had people that have given to me. Crosby, the guy that runs all my sound, like, I credit him with redirecting me as a kid. And then I met you, and I met all these people, Jared, who is now the co-writer and co-director of Trash Planet. He's been a friend of mine, and he was he was writing for all the time that I've known him. He's always writing stories through songs, lyrics, or through stuff. Yeah, like he's constantly writing stories. He cares about storytelling a lot.
Right.
And he's a deeply convicted person, like he's the kind of person that if he does something wrong, you don't have to tell him. He'll torture himself and he'll come to you and tell you, like, I did something wrong and I'm sorry. He's a person of deep conviction, and he's, I value that because, we both kind of have that. We've kind of got that over the years of realizing, when we've been assholes and learning how to correct that. And, a lot of this stuff, like with Trash Planet, man, like even just this idea, like I always like sci-fi because I like kind of writing in this world that is, everybody's kind of weird and everything feels slightly familiar, but still a little bit odd. Cause that's the way that I felt. That's the way I felt when I started meeting everybody. Like I knew people, but I still felt and continue to feel like no matter what I do, I always have this deep sense of imposter syndrome. So writing this story about, and with these new episodes, writing a little bit about that is, something that's important, is kind of like, figure this out and kind of reflecting on some of that. So I don't want to get a whole lot into that necessarily, but to kind of just pepper that in, like writing about this imposter syndrome, writing about something that seems normal but is still odd, and just this disagreement between these two things. That's something that I've always kind of wanted to put into Trash Planet, and we'll continue to put into future projects that we work on as well.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like that's everything. I mean, it's just being able like relate, like there's so much related. Trash Planet is really it's almost like autobiography. It's kind of like this weird, there's so much of me in my characters.
Yeah.
In weird ways. Like, it's
always fun because we write these characters, right? And we kind of put some version of this person in this character. So, we put some of you in your character, some of Brad and Brad's character, some of me and my character. But obviously we write them, we put them in situations. They start to pick up things from you that you didn't always expect, and start to also get kind of a life of their own, right? Where these characters you're trying to honor the characters, but you are also finding new ways of really identifying with these characters and different characters. And it's definitely a lot of fun, man. And the whole thing is like, I mean, you're talking about an undertaking of like learning how to do this stuff has been incredible. It's been an incredible feat. Like trying to figure this out. It is exhausting. It's difficult. It's at times I'm like, you mentioned like you just feel that deep sense like I have no idea what I'm doing and I'm going to screw this up. Like every day I have that. But it's in the end when you do it, you're like, God damn, man, when you're doing it and you actually get something done, like every victory feels hard won. It's cool, man. And it's like, it's to kind of go back, like this is the first time, I didn't like do well in school as a result of my upbringing. We didn't have a home most of the time, and I didn't graduate high school. I didn't do well in college. Like I kind of was, functionally okay at skateboarding and functionally okay at running a band, but not in any way where I felt like this is a thing where I feel as though, you've got my attention and I'm going to give you everything I have. And
Yeah.
If I eat shit, I'll figure it out, I'll get up and I'll try to work through it, kind of a thing. Or at least that's the way I'm feeling now. Who knows? But yeah, it's incredible. And it's cool because to see all the same things like applied. Like when I saw that you were doing Twitch and doing Twitch to the degree that you have, because like last I had heard from you, we were friends, but I hadn't heard from you a lot, and it just seemed like you were kind of preoccupied. But then I saw you out on the other side, like you found a community. You know, you built this community. You I don't know. It's crazy to me. It's just absolutely crazy to me because that's what we had in the music scene and the skateboarding scene. You know, you had a community of people that you just kind of entered, but this felt different. Like somehow you had built up this thing. I don't know, man. Crazy impressive. The whole Twitch thing, I can't really even explain. Other than I just got really lucky or something. I don't know. Like Twitch is something, there's more to it than just Twitch though, right? Like it's a phenomenon. It's like a phenomenon. Yeah.
It's right?
Phenomenon. I think both are right.
Okay.
I think you can say both. Phenomenon.
One of them makes me feel extremely. It's a phenomenon.
Let's get a cleaner take of that.
Yeah.
take it from the top.
Welcome to this is a recording of a Trash Planet.
Yeah.
Let's get a cleaner take.
Yeah.
I want you to read it, but don't read it.
Read a little faster. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's definitely a note today. Read the intent. Don't read the lines.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But yeah,
Classic
I mean, like
direction.
Twitch is just so, and it's not even like the same thing is happening on YouTube and Mixer, and it's just this idea of like a community built online is such a powerful idea. It's like if we book those shows for the whole world, and all you got to do is just go to it, you know? And like, I feel a responsibility to put on the best show that I can. Because that's how it was back then, right? Like we were always putting on the best shows that we could.
Yeah.
Always. There was nothing second about it, right? And like, now that there's this opportunity for us to put on shows all the time. Now there's this opportunity for us to put on shows all the time. Like that's really exciting. And I don't know, there's definitely something really powerful to Twitch. There's something really powerful to the era that we live in right now.
I've definitely seen it. I definitely feel it. I don't know that honestly, I've really liked streaming when I was doing it, and I would like to do it more. And the problem is, like, a lot of the thing that I'm working on right now, I'm under NDA, so I can't actually share any of the work that I'm working on, which is disappointing because that's a thing that I think it helps when I'm drawing a lot to kind of invite somebody into your home, so you're not just sitting in front of your desk.
Dude, I got some shit you could draw, man. Pizza and I'm just kidding.
Yeah, no, I know. I mean, that stuff I definitely could. And even just playing video games, and there's so much. Like I really feel as though, especially with Twitch, like, oh man, like you do a lot of it, and there's definitely a lot of folks that are kind of like, you know, I listen to the Rob's podcast or most of it. I didn't get an opportunity to finish it today, but like, you know, when he's talking about how he's going through and he's just all the multitasking of queuing up a new song and kind of working with people. I've listened to his stream a lot because when I'm drawing, it's soothing, but it's conversational and just, I don't know how to explain, but when you have somebody else that's just talking, it's comforting in this way. Like, you know what I mean? Like you kind of go a little bit stir crazy when you're just alone and there's nobody talking. So even just listening to music for hours makes me crazy. I need to hear talking. I need to hear conversation so my brain can kind of get that. So I've turned to his stream a lot and hearing like how he did it, and just it's such a thing that it just originates. Like I can see what people are doing. I'm not going to do what they're doing, but I'm going to take a bit of inspiration about how they do. I mean, like obviously he plays video games and stuff like that. That's the spirit of Twitch. But he takes this other thing and he says, this is also something that I, Rob, can offer. And this is how I think it can kind of work within this platform. And I've always loved that. You know what I mean? Like when you see a band that you really inspire, then you see a million people that just are trying to be that band. But then you see a couple of bands that say, I'm inspired by this band, trying to find their voice, their own voice. And then they'll make something equally as unique to them. And that's a difficult trail because you're not walking on an existing trail. You have to make your own trail. And you know, someone like you, someone like Rob, like seeing that stuff is always inspiring to me. So like even listening to that podcast was like really deeply inspiring to me. And it's something that I want to do because I think that especially now where, you know, you can use Adobe products to create a live cartoon. You know, there's all these things. I should not. Like, I'm just gonna be like show my hand, and then everybody listens to it. Like, I'm gonna do it.
It's gonna be one damage. I know it. It's gonna be like
that was actually a person I was talking about a cartoon. I was talking about some ideas, so and he reached out to me. He's like, hey man, just like maybe keep your ideas to yourself so you're not broadcasting.
How
like,
hilarious would it be?
I have $1 million app idea. And then somebody...
Yeah. Like next week, Damage is streaming like with the exact idea he told you not to tell anyone about.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. He's like, I tried to tell you, man.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Just seeing people like that's so cool to me. Sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. Do you ever watch like... I find a lot of inspiration. I used to watch like behind the scenes videos of like Blink 182 like in their practice space. And just, like, dude, seeing their practice space was like, wow, like I have a practice space kind of like that. You know,
I love that. So I will watch when it comes to this stuff, I will watch behind the scenes everything. I mean, listen to me. I am a absolute freaking interview hoe. I am listening to interviews from everything, like, because if you can find, you never know what you're looking for, but you'll find just a little nugget of something that just changes everything.
Yes.
I'm listening to interviews from people that are writing, directing, the people that are, color artists, like just things about process or how a certain thing is directed, how they work with actors or how an actor came up to be, a person that somebody met. Like, when I found, I listened to an interview with Lauren Bouchard. Lauren Bouchard is the guy who created Home Movies. He created Bob's Burgers. And he was like a 30-something-year-old bartender who didn't know what he was doing with his life. And he happened to run into this guy that he used to be in an art class with. And that person said, hey, could you help us make a cartoon? And he's like, yeah, sure. I can still do cartoons. And he went on to make Home Movies. And then from there, he met John Benjamin, he met Brendan Small, he met, all these people, and he kept growing, and now he's running a primetime Fox show. You know what I mean? If you just find people that are doing this thing and you just make a decent impression, like, you never know what you'll find, what it is that you're looking for, but you can always find little pieces of information that you can apply to your own process, to your own hustle. Yeah, and it sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes you take it and it feels like it's the missing link. You apply it and it doesn't work the way, but you keep doing it, and then you get a budge. Then it budges. You know what I mean? I love that stuff, though. I am interviews.
That's a lot of Twitch, man.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
And like what always went, like you get people who will completely and totally copy the same thing, and that kind of is, and then you get people who will take that idea and make it their own, and that's when you really see a winner. Right. Yeah. And like you're like, wow, like this is really thought out, not just a good idea, replicated. It's like a really. And that applies to everything from the simplest stuff, like the simplest stuff, to the most complex. It's really, but the same, like you said, the same things in music. Like you hear that band that sounds just like band A, and then you hear that band that sounds like a really good version of what you liked about band A. Right. Yeah. And like that's that might just be what you call creative. I don't know. Yeah, man. Like, there's always some version of it. Somebody that takes the inspiration and they make something completely different. That's cool. Sometimes they
take that thing and, stand on the shoulder of giants, and they make something more fleshed out, a better version of that. Like there's all different kinds of versions of it. Yeah. Let me ask you this. Have you found it as you got further into streaming, have you found it difficult to just sit and watch a stream without some kind of an analytical eye?
Not necessarily. What I find difficult is when somebody's doing something and they're doing it so well, and I know it just wouldn't apply to the vibe that I've created.
Right.
Like I get a lot of that with like role playing. Like I want to so badly be a role play streamer. I love doing voices. I love atmospheric. When I'm in like playing No Man's Sky and it's such an immersive like environment. Like I love this idea of like creating a real memorable story. But people don't want to, you know what I mean? Like
it's like a different audience than the one that you've developed.
It's like a hardcore band being like, I really love jazz.
Man, that's crazy. So, because I love your role play streams, but I happen to love role play streams, but it's also because of my interests happen to be like, loving stories and seeing these things.
Well, and I
think I get that. Yeah.
Take it to the next level.
Yeah.
With they cue up music in these tense scenes, and then they have hilarious, situations, and the real true answer is like, I could go a more role play route, but I'm so afraid of rebuilding, and that's such a stupid thing. So I guess to answer the original question, like I become super analytical of myself when I maybe a jealousy thing. I don't know. I have an issue with like I get jealous. I'm like I want this magic this guy's making, But like
I think I have a version of that too. I think I'm just not as far along in it, but that makes sense. Kind of like you want it all, but then you realize that there's a degree of curation you have to do, consistency.
Yeah. And like the curation is what they've been building for years. Right. And like, I'm sure role play streamers go, man, I just want to play Fortnite, or like, I just want to play Apex or PUBG, and like, but they feel like they have to, it's a cornering yourself sort of thing.
So, so to use your example, you mentioned like a hardcore band, or like, we want to do like a jazz album, and their fans would be like, what in the hell are you doing? And they're like, you're right. So we'll make another band, side projects. Is that a thing? Yeah. Are there alt accounts for Twitch?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Where people will have like an alt account and this is for this and this is for this kind of a thing?
Yeah. Definitely. I mean, there's no rule against it.
No, yeah, I don't think I've thought about it, but
the idea of create, like if you already have this audience, right? Like why would you want to create a new account to like, because you get it in your head that you're going to damage your current audience by doing something different. So I'll go behind their back and try to create another one. You know what I mean? Like
yeah. And then like, anytime that, what are you going to stream on your free time, and then suddenly you're not, you know what I mean? Like you're kind of taken away. Yeah, it's kind of like a bit of a conundrum to be in there, huh?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think it's what it comes down to is like people are afraid of losing their audience, right? And like,
right.
What I've learned is that if you're just the best streamer that you can be, I know it sounds corny, like if you're just there for people will be more invested in whatever you do, not the game you play. Yeah, there's always going to be people who are invested in the game, right?
And I think that you've done a pretty good job at like cultivating that audience in particular. Like I think that you have some people. That's the biggest compliment
you can tell me.
What's the biggest compliment I can tell you?
No, that's the biggest compliment that you could ever tell me about streaming, right? That like you watch me for me and not the game I play.
Yeah, it's like kind of come for the game, stay for the streamer is kind of like the situation. Like, you know, you switch to No Man's Sky and then that becomes your primary game and you develop like a pretty decent audience, or like, you know, you play, you know, whatever game and you kind of catch some people that are just searching for people playing that game. But you've developed like a community of like a very open community and a very fun community. And then you have a couple of people that are contributing in a way that is, I think kind of like helps put the ring on the finger a little bit. Yeah, I think that you have like a pretty solid thing there where it's a little bit more, what's the word I'm looking for here? I think a little bit more resilient against those kinds of small little changes here. Here, I'm going to take a quick break. I'm going to let my dog out of the room. My
no worries.
partner just got home. I'll be right back. Go ahead, Bagel. There you go, Bagel. Go.
Good Bagel. I was thinking, what I think it is I think like what you learn streaming, right? Like everybody wants to be that pro, you know, like streamers get into it. They're like, man, I really want, like, you know, a lot of streamers now, like they get into it. They're like, I want to be like professional, you know, I want to be like the best at this game that I can be. And what ends up happening is the people who, for me, what ended up happening for me, because all I can really go off is my own story, right? Like,
right.
What I've learned is that, like, I'm never going to be the best at a game because I'm just not very good at video games, right? And I accept that. I don't even really want to be super good at video games. What I really, really want is that for people, the video game is just to get you hanging out with me.
Right.
If you like me, you know, you'll come around, like you'll come around even when I'm playing a different game. The game is just the video games you play just give you an opportunity to meet the people.
But see, isn't that so funny though? Because not only that, like I would even add on to that the fact that like sometimes the way you play a game, if you're not so good, somehow adds to the character. Oh yeah, somehow adds to it, because like you end up being this person that's like, you know, you're a source of humor and it's fun to like, I don't know, like you're really good at kind of generating laughter and like a positive mood. So I think that like in that way, not, you know, you've kind of developed a thing where you're like, well, if I'm not going to be the best at gaming, I'll lean into it. And then you're pretty good at that. Like that's, you know, that's a common theme through everything where you're like, well, if I'm not the best in this thing, I'll find this other way of standing out. And that's kind of been a talent of yours since I've known you. It's a thing that I've taken notice on.
Well, thanks. I mean, I never thought of it that way. It's just, I mean, it's I would love the best scenario, right? Is like you're like, man, what's this video game about? What's No Man's Sky about? What's Red Dead Redemption 2 about? Whatever, you know, like I've heard a lot about it. What is it about? And then you click on the streamer and you go like, hey, what's this game about? And they go, hey man, what's up? Like, welcome. It's about this. Like, if you have any questions, let me know. Then you ask a couple more questions. And then before you know it, like what started out as an interest about the game has become like, I like this guy. I want to be friends with him.
Right.
And like, that's the best case scenario. And I think that that's how you build a community on Twitch.
Yeah.
Like, because people a lot of times aren't going to Twitch to make a friend, you know? They're going to Twitch because like they have no idea what a video game is about. And before they spend $30, $60 on it, they want to watch somebody play it.
Right. Yeah.
And like, that's the magic there. Like, you know, that's kind of always been the goal, you know? And like, if I can relate to, if I can find somebody who maybe was too afraid to leave their house or you know, or like I was experiencing something like really, really shitty in their life. Like if I can just give them something to relate to, that's the reason I started streaming in the first place. It was never to be full time or to do anything other than like just help somebody through a kind of crappy situation in their life through giving them something to relate to, because that's what Twitch did for me. And like, you know, that's all I've ever wanted in it.
Yeah, I've always loved that. When I first saw it, because I mean, like, I'm kind of like one of these people that are like, what's Twitch when I first arrived to it kind of a thing. I mean, I guess everybody is when they first arrived to it, but I was kind of like a late to the party. And I think I knew what it was, but I didn't really know what it was, like, or like know the specifics of what it was. So I had to see it in play. And then it's, just like anything you see, your introductory, then you kind of go out and you try to find other stuff. What is it typically, and then what can it be, I guess?
Yeah.
And it's cool because the thing is, like, when I first saw it, like I saw what it could be, and then I saw what it was, you know what I mean? Because like overwhelmingly, there's a lot of Twitch of just people kind of doing the same thing, playing different games, what it was, I think, originally designed for. But then there's, there are some people, and I'm sure that, I don't know what the overall consensus of someone like Dr. Disrespect is, but, he's bringing this new element, right? This like, there's some degree of role play and communication, and he's kind of playing this character. He's acting is really what he's doing, and he's got this whole production thing. And then you have someone like a smaller version and a different version of that. Someone like Cardboard Cowboy, like who's like, I mean, how did you even come up with this idea? And then what were the following ideas of execution? Like it's so cool. It's so interesting. Yeah. But then you see, even just like these low, like these streamers where it's just like no bells, no whistles, none of that stuff, where you just have people that are just making these genuine connections and building these communities of people. And when you kind of just like wash away all that stuff, when you're not really paying attention to like that stuff, you're not trying to find this thing that's satisfying some creative urge, and you're just watching things for what they are and like the community that they're driving. It's incredible. The amount of, I mean, service that this does, I mean, I know for you, I know for someone like Josh, Normie Peasant, like, people that have really bad social anxiety, this has done tremendous good for. It's just so cool. It's crazy to imagine, like, what do people do without this tool, without this thing? It allowed people to kind of have a healthy connection, a live connection with people that are doing things. And I don't know. I have a degree of, even though I'm not a streamer, like a full, like a common streamer, like I have just a degree of real appreciation for this thing. It's so cool to see what people are able to kind of give to it and what people are able to take from it.
Exactly. 100%. I mean, I think I completely agree. I mean, I know it sounds corny, but like I really attribute it to saving a large chunk of my life, if not the entire thing. Like, yeah. And it makes me wonder, like, how many other people it has helped. I don't think we'll ever know. Yeah. Right. But I mean, yeah, man. I mean, and like, honestly, like, yeah, I think even like that would be, that's just I don't know. It's kind of crazy.
It is crazy, man. It's crazy to see, like, if we could see us now.
Yeah. Who would have thought?
Yeah, man. Yeah, it's cool. Yeah. It's cool. Yeah. What is that? The Paul Rudd? Like,
yeah, dude. Who would have thought? Not me.
Not me.
Not me. I love that meme. I used it today. I was like, I sent it to, who was it? It was, or somebody was like, dude, somebody told me, it was like, man, I'm really proud of like all this. And I sent that meme and it was like, who would have thought, man? Not me. Not me. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Oh, God.
All right, buddy. That is about, I mean, this is the longest one. I could talk forever. We have to do this again. We have to.
I would be happy to. Anytime you want me, let me know. I can make time.
And I'm sorry for all the technical difficulties and all that. Like, I'm going to
pull please don't worry about any of that. I always have technical difficulties when I'm doing stuff. I guess par for the course. It's no problem at all.
Yeah. You're cursed. I'm just kidding.
It's my fault.
All right, buddy. Well, hey, where can we find the Trash Planet stuff?
So I guess, what is it? Man, youtube.com/Robitboi. Is that right? Man, I wish I had known that I had a plug coming.
No. It'll be down in the description. Just search YouTube for Trash Planet. Big stuff that we can't really talk about in the future. Huge shit that I am personally so excited for.
Yeah, cool things that are coming, and then we have a couple of little piecemeal things that we made that can kind of keep you keep you satisfied for now, ish. Yeah, that's really all I have to share, I think.
Yeah, I'll link it up in the description of the YouTube video. Dude, thank you again. I really, really appreciate it. And yeah, if you like, I'd love to have you on again, you know, in a better long format sort of thing. I want to do another season where like I bring people back. I'm going to end this one at like 20 and then I'll restart the season, or what, I'll do season 3 or whatever.
Cool. Yeah. I'd be happy to come back. I really appreciate you having me, man.
Yeah. And thanks again. Yeah, thank you. I love you.
Love you, buddy.
And thanks again for listening. Really, really appreciate it. Make sure you check out Trash Planet on YouTube. It's a cartoon that Danny's been working on for a very long time with our buddy Jared and Brad Crosby. I do a couple of voices in it as well. Yeah, just search YouTube for Trash Planet. Keep your ear to the ground for more episodes of the podcast. Thanks again for all the support on Twitch, YouTube. Thank you for listening. Don't work too hard. Take care of one another. Treat each other right. And I will see you on the next one. Thanks again. I love ya.